Welcome to another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. And now, your host, live from England, here she is. It's Deborah Ruffini.
Greetings from England. This is Deborah Ruffini with another broadcast of Spiritual Concerns, Deborah Ruffini Show. Today I wanted to, it's just me, myself and I, and I wanted to talk a bit about the peaceful protest I attended yesterday evening in honour of Henry Nowak. I believe this has made the international news, and it was last December, as many of you may be aware. A young man, only a mere 19 years of age, Henry Nowak, was stabbed and brutally murdered by a Sikh man by the name of Vikram Digwa. Now, I felt very strong. I mean, as we all do, feel very strongly when someone's been killed. But when you add injustice and error to where something either could have been prevented or where there's been misconduct involved, and so I had just seen an awful lot in, particularly sort of like on online media, and in the Facebook news feed kept coming up this picture of this young man. I wasn't really aware that this had happened back in December of last year. I just kept seeing this photo of this young man and the video footage of the, what do you call it, the cameras that the police wear, and just being absolutely mortified at what I saw, what I heard. And this poor young man that had been brutally murdered, the police coming to arrest a dying man, putting him in handcuffs. This was not someone who needed restraining. This was someone who was the victim, someone who was dying. But they come and arrest him, and at the hands of lies. So it was the brother of Vikram Digwa who phoned the police and said, this is all on, many of you have probably seen it, it's actually on YouTube along with many other social media platforms. So he phones the police saying, basically spouting a load of lies. We've been racially abused. I think he's drunk. It was the phone call saying, I think he may have been drunk. He's slouched in a corner. He racially abused me and my brother. And then the police, the call handler, excuse me, is asking, are there any weapons involved? And the brother says, no. And then I think the call handler asks, I think he says something along the lines of, was it a racial, or what race is he, or is he white? It was something to do with, we just wanted to rule this out, sort of thing. And so the lies continue in the phone call. And it's very much playing the victim, that they were provoked. And so basically calling the police on their own crime that they've committed. One thing that really struck me with this is very strange. Did they not have the sense to think, well, when the police come out, you've called the police, when they come out, are you not going to find that this man has actually been stabbed and he's not drunk? But anyway, the police get called out and they speak to the brother of Vikram Digwa, the murderer. And the brother says, the police ask, have you been injured? So you've got this man dying on the floor, this young Polish man, 18 years of age, Henry Nowak student. And the police are asking what happened. The brother is saying how they were, but it's all very vague. There's no specific details. It's all very vague. How they were racially attacked, and I've got this, which seemed to be an invisible bruise above my eye, and he pulled my turban off. Incidentally, the young man who was killed was given the nickname, I think it was something like 1 Pint Henry, because he couldn't hold it. He didn't drink much. He couldn't hold his drink. So he didn't drink very much. But mortifyingly, the police come out and they see this man who's incredibly pale. And you can see by the footage, you just got to see the hand. It's, very, very pale. He's dying. Been stabbed 4 times by Vikram Digwa. And the poor man, I believe it's 9 times, he says, I can't breathe. He's trying hard. He's gasping. I can't breathe. Call an ambulance. I've been stabbed. To which the police reply, I don't think you have, mate. The female officer says, oh, we've got to check though. And so this poor man was killed, murdered, completely unprovoked, as far as we know, unprovoked. But even if there was a bad name mentioned, which we don't believe there was. In fact, it was asked, are you a bad man? It still wouldn't warrant a murder, a stabbing. In the name of the Sikh faith, Vikram Digwa was carrying a 21 centimetre blade. I believe that there's certain charity shops in England that, or it might be how it is for all of them, where they're not allowed to sell knitting needles anymore. So little old ladies can't buy knitting needles because they could be classed as an offensive weapon. But you have Sikhs, in the name of their faith, are allowed to carry 21 centimetre blades. I mean, it's just beyond ludicrous. So I attended this. I've never been to a protest before. I didn't know what to expect. I was a little bit nervous because there had been... So this took place... sorry, I should have mentioned prior to this. This took place in my county. So I'm in a town called Portsmouth, and the next town is Southampton, and this took place in Southampton. And there had been riots and throwing wheelie bins on fire at the police. And but I'd heard that this, excuse me, in my town was a peaceful protest. So I thought, that's okay. I'll go along to this. There were lots of reasons that I felt I wanted to go. But a big part of this was on the whole principle of abuser, perpetrator phoning the police with a bunch of lies, where those lies are automatically believed. And then the police come on the scene and they have evidence flying in the face of those lies, but we still have to believe those lies until we see that he's dying. Let me just repeat that. A lifeless, near to lifeless man, a dying man, and they are handcuffing him on the lies of me and my brother have been racially abused, fully functioning, these two men fully functioning, but we have to believe this lie over what we see before us. And this is where this sort of policing is beyond insane. It's highly dangerous. And on a minor level, but the same principle, as I've done broadcasts on this before, whether it's just been myself or speaking with a guest, the same thing has happened with me, in that an abusive person phoned the police telling lies, no evidence looked into, where the lies were automatically believed. And when I presented evidence flying in the face of those lies, nothing was looked into. When I wanted a rational conversation about how you made 2 and 2 make 78, how you believe the abuser just on blind faith, because I say so, therefore you must believe. But when you've got evidence that goes against what that person said, you don't want to know. And there's no apology. There's no rational conversation. What rational conversation can there be? It's just a blowing a raspberry and running away. And that doesn't solve anything. So I was there in honour of Henry and his loved ones, and on behalf of the British people who are taking a stand against this sort of thing happening, crying wolf, saying it's racism when it's not. So I get there, and there's a turnout of probably, I'd guess, about 100, 150 people. And very moving. Candles were lit, flowers were laid. There was a speech given. And it's very, very difficult. I felt a bit of guilt going to this because it was actually put on by a group called Portsmouth Patriots. And I think, so they basically stand against illegal mass immigration. But I do think there are those perhaps who are jumping on the bandwagon and just that are plain racist thugs, where it's ungrounded, it's it's unfair on people who want a better life and are escaping from danger. We're so fortunate to be born in a place where it's a good provider. We have a lot going for us. And it's easy to attack and be horrible to those who are different, inverted commas, or just because we don't like the look of them. Get out, you don't belong here. Racism is horrible. But I think there's also, we need to keep people safe. And yes, obviously, British people can murder people. And it's more of a person thing. Is someone a nice person or not? Is someone, irrespective of where they're from or what colour their skin is, are they a sort of person who might kill another person? But I think there's certain things we have to, be careful about and be fair about. And we can't have people carrying knives where we say it's legal for this person on this basis, but it's illegal for another person on another basis. And I think it's everything, isn't it? It's about trying to be fair. And if you have got someone crying wolf saying it's a racist attack when it's just a young man trying to, I think he'd gone to the pub to meet some college friends, and completely, as far as we know, unprovoked. And so it was just really interesting to go there, and people are obviously very, very angry. It was a very emotional event. And it was really interesting because I didn't quite know where I was going, even though it was in my own town. I didn't really know where I was heading for. So I got a taxi. And I had no idea that this event was put on by Portsmouth patriots. So I get this taxi, and the driver is actually a nice Sikh gentleman. And I'm very much aware of, I'm there because I really feel for what happened. I feel very sad about what happened. I feel very angry at what happened. But to me, it's the whole thing about the police must take responsibility when there's been, an error or misconduct. We must take responsibility, because this is people's lives and deaths. And so that was my main motive. But then the taxi, we get a bit nearer, and I see all these England flags, and a couple of people with loudspeakers. And it clearly looks like it's from the outward appearance, it looks like it's a racist event. And he knows that he's the taxi driver, the Sikh taxi driver knows he's taking me to this. And I'm sort of thinking, oh, crumbs, this doesn't really give a very good appearance at all. So I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, thank you, mate. And I said, I just want you to know I'm not one of them. And he just looked at me and grinned. And I said, I am here because I don't like the way the police handle things where they take no responsibility. I said, that's my reason. And I said to him, we need immigrants. I'm really thankful to our amazing doctors, nurses, the people who serve us well, serve our country well. And I said, we need you. And I said, I just want you to know that what this looks like, I don't know what I'm stepping into, but I'm here because of the other reason. So that was all fine. And it lasted for probably, I would say, 2 hours, something like that. The weather didn't know what to do. It was 1 minute it was raining, the next minute bright sunshine, so you sort of dried off as soon as there was a downpour, really. But what really hit me and touched me was, so this was actually, this took place outside a police station in the town. It was sort of not the main one, but it was a central police station. And I was very much aware of people giving dirty looks to the police, and their job was to just stand there and make sure there were no riots, and bearing in mind the actual riots that took place in Southampton where this murder happened. So they've got to be there. And I was aware of their sort of, how shall we say, their presence but not being part of it, sort of set aside. It's our job. We're not part of this. We're just here. And so it was almost like that the police actually looked quite aloof. Naturally so, because we were protesting about this, about police misconduct outside a police station. So this very large man came and stood next to me in a police uniform, and I just looked at him and I just kind of grinned and I said, all right. And he said, the weather doesn't know what to do, does it? I said, no, it's just, that's the British thing. We talk, if we don't know what to say, we talk about the weather. So, and at that moment, when this officer was just nice, I immediately felt so guilty being there. And so, and I said to him, I just want to thank you for your service. And you are called to serve and protect. And I just said, I'm here to honour Henry Nowak and those that are grieving for him, and to try and make Britain a safer place. And I didn't go into my own situation. I said, but I had a scenario where a perpetrator got the police onto me and I got into trouble. I was never arrested, but it was said by the officer back then, this was a few years ago, as you may remember, that if we receive any further complaints, you will be arrested. And I remember thinking that was dangerous, because in effect it's saying if we receive any more lies backed up by no evidence, I'm still going to be arrested even if I have the evidence against that. So that I was actually quite scared at that moment. But so yeah, I just said, and he wasn't friendly, but he wasn't unfriendly, and he just sort of shrugged his shoulders. He didn't say anything like, "Oh, I'm sorry that happened," or "That's okay, I wasn't looking for sympathy." I think sometimes just acknowledgement, not the one wants sympathy, but it's just an acknowledgement of this isn't okay. So, and I thought, but he's probably, I don't know about police training. Maybe they're told to just not mention it. If it's something to do with an existing a case that has existed before, maybe they're actually trained to just not say anything, but just be, to just be there, sort of thing. So I just said to him, "Is this what you expected?" He said, "Yeah, I didn't really know what to think." And I said, how do you feel being here?" And I think he just said something along the lines, "Well, it is what it is. People are allowed to feel angry." He didn't say people have the right to be angry, or he didn't say, "I understand how people are angry." He said, "People have the right to be angry." I'm reminded of the Pat Benatar song. Is it Invincible? We have the right to be angry. And but he clearly didn't want to. He was happy to the limit was commenting on the weather, really. He didn't seem to want to engage with me, or he wasn't unfriendly. He just didn't want to say much. And then there was a song sung for Henry. There was a few speeches, and I just got talking to a few people. There was a local, the local press there, which a lady was speaking to. And I was just sort of looking around, and there were people riding past in their cars, and some were shouting obscenities at the group. Some were shouting obscenities at the police, and some were sort of clapping. So it was kind of a mixture. And then I was about to head home, and the weather was starting to sort of brighten up, and it was getting a bit sunny. It was actually quite. I just fancied sort of like a, the kind of thing, you don't want to go home just yet. You may fancy a wander, or may want to call in for a coffee somewhere, or it was that sort of. And there were two officers, sort of a few feet away from what was going on, and a man and a woman. And so because I was going that way to go home, I just sort of nodded, and they seemed a bit more friendly than their colleague who stood next to me. And so I said, I thought, what can I say, sort of semi in fun, to sort of lighten, And I just said, "I bet you really look forward to being called to these events, don't you?" And I think sometimes when you engage with people, it kind of makes people sort of more friendly towards you. It's yeah, I think if someone knows that you're approachable, then they're approachable in turn, and then they just they were quite smiling. I just got the impression that they were a lot more friendlier than their colleague, and he said something like, "Oh, I've been called from Andover," which I still think is part of the county, but a bit further away. And the male officer just looked very he had sort of bags under his eyes. He looked, when you look into someone's eyes, they just look really tired. He actually looked exhausted. He just looked as if he was on autopilot. He looked very tired. And I said, has it been a long day? I mean, this protest only took, it was a couple of hours. But, it's probably just knowing you've got to attend that. You don't know what you're going to... It must be awful, the police. They don't know what they're going to. Must be scary. What a brave job. So... And but I went into a little more detail with them, and because I was still feeling sort of guilty at being there, with knowing that some of these people were racist thugs that hadn't thought anything through. They just don't like anything that they can't, anything or anyone they can't relate to. It's we and them. Like I say, some had sort of thought things through, and they're a bit more, a bit more sensible about things. That the motive wasn't purely to just bully, So, and I said, just to kind of elaborate that I wasn't one of them. I said to these two how I just said I'm here, and I said I've just spoken to your colleague, and I said you do a great job. Thank you for looking after us. And I said, but and I went into further detail about the reason I'm here. And I just said I just never got. I couldn't have a rational conversation. I'd never got an apology, and I would have loved to have. And I actually said, how we, just as people, in general, when someone's wronged us, we feel so much better if they say sorry, rather than I don't care, and I said, but when it's done in the name of policing, where people can get arrested and where there's more serious consequences if something's in error, then it's a bit more serious. And he was lovely. He agreed. The lady at this point, the female officer, I think she probably sort of wandered away to sort of, maybe she just wanted us to have a one-to-one chat, or maybe she was called away. She had my naivety is going to say walkie-talkie. I don't know what the official word for walkie-talkie is. I'm thinking of Starsky and Hutch. Always wanted a walkie-talkie as a child. And now we have grown-up ones called mobile phones. So, so she had sort of wandered off, and he introduced himself. We shook hands, and he said, well, with any line of work, we all make mistakes. I said, yeah, that's true. He said, like with hospital workers, that it's really important they get things right. He said, but we take the flak for those that have got things wrong, and then we're tarred with the same brush. And it was really interesting, because that opened up conversation so much. And I said, yeah, it must be really difficult to take this on. And, whenever there's a tragedy or case of police corruption, especially if it's on a national, international scale, then you're immediately clumped in with the bad guy. Gaining the name of the pigs and I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on air, but, whether it's certain initials or a number that we can give the police force. And I asked him, I said, since this has happened, and then quite recently there's been a murder in Belfast. A man a Somalian chap had tried to behead someone in Belfast, and he gouged both one eye out, and I think he's this poor man is now blind, but he was also had learning disabilities. So there's an awful lot of outrage at the moment. And I said, do you find in your career that whenever there is something that we get very angry about, are you treated worse? And he said, yeah. He said people that will spit, they will refer to us as pigs, or derogatory name, and giving us dirty looks. And then I thought, crumbs, I did that. I did that for a long time after, one police officer phoned. And I mentioned to him as well that I said it was just her tone, the way she spoke to me like this, very patronising. I said it was the rudeness of sort of, don't you know who I am? And, she'd got her facts wrong. And he said, yeah, he said, there are those in the force that are like that. He said, but I personally like to treat people the way that I would like to be treated. And I said, we need more police officers like yourself. And I think this is what it's all about. When you get someone operating in the name of the law, and we just blame the rest of you lot for it. And I said, but also that the other thing is, and he didn't really want to, and I thought, I don't want to put him in an awkward position, but I did express, the other thing is where when one police officer acts with misconduct and the others, and I gave the example of the sergeant covering for the officer in charge in my case, telling lies on the report to cover for her, and now you've got two of them, and then the PDSI, Professional Standards Department investigator, I think that's what it stands for, when he then covered for them both, and it wasn't until the independent body, the IOPC, who polices the police, it wasn't until they came on the scene that all the others were found to be at fault. And I really wanted to say, to ask him about that, whether, are the police taught to cover for the bad officers? But I didn't. I just said that it was the fact that everyone, you have this one initial officer accusing me, and then all the others sort of gather behind her and go, yeah, as if you've got the school bully who's being protected by the prefect, And he just sort of, he didn't make, I'm just trying to think, I don't think he made much comment to that, but he just sort of nodded and was listening. And he said, unfortunately, this does happen in all sorts of professions. And he said, yeah, he did say about, if you think of the vast majority of things we see to, get called out to, we operate really well. But then you get the few things like this dreadful thing that happened with Henry Nowak, where something was very, very poorly operated. That's the bit that makes the headlines. It's always the bad policing that makes the headlines. It's never the good. The good policing, and this really sort of resonated with me. He said the good policing is the stuff that the general public take for granted. He said, but when we make a mistake, then it's everyone wants to know about it. Everyone wants to attack us. He said, but you look at the people here who are against us. because of a few, or in comparison, very limited unfortunate scenarios. He said, as soon as someone's burgled, as soon as someone's mugged, as soon as there's some sort of crime or domestic, who are they going to call? They're just going to call us and take us for granted, and then we screw up over something, and that's what we're known for. And I thought, my goodness, that's quite true. And I said, do you know what? I said, I've never really thought of it like that. I said, it must be really difficult. It must be quite hurtful to come to something like this, or to experience the stuff you experience. He said, no, you actually get, he said, I get accustomed to it. And he says he said he was probably sort of, I think he said he was 46. He said it's water off a duck's back. Yeah, I just thought that was just really interesting. And then I thought about this when I came home, as I was walking home, and I was thinking about where when people are looked after in hospital, after an operation, or just like thanking the GP or the nurses that have looked after you. You know, some people take flowers, some people take chocolates. But I was thinking, that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's our physical body being looked after in the name of something. We're being made well again by these heroes. But I suppose the police, it's not quite the same, is it, as sort of making your body well again. It's in the name of protection rather than get well soon. And I thought, yeah, that's probably why we give flowers and chocolates more to nurses, doctors. And it was a real blessing to speak to him, because it made me feel better about the police, because I'd worn my Arrest Bad Cops t-shirt, and what I like about that t-shirt is it doesn't say a certain number or letters that are very defamatory, should we say. But I think most people think we should arrest bad cops. But I can see how that may be read. And again, I felt really, really bad speaking to this really nice man, serving and protecting, and saying, no, it is bad when police get it wrong and abuse their powers. And there's my sort of chest facing him with Arrest Bad Cops on this blue t-shirt. But then I thought, well, no, I'm sure he would agree with that. In fact, I could have asked him, but then I thought that might have been a bit rude. But yeah, so I just thought, no, it was just really, really interesting. It was an eye-opener on all levels, just to see. It was quite emotional. It was, the whole thing was just an interesting experience. And it's good that we had the police there. It's good that we had the police there to actually see how angry everyone was at how this case was handled. But of course, it was always good. It was also good to have them there, because anything could have kicked off, and what would stop something kicking off if they weren't there? So yeah, the previous broadcasts I've done, it might have been 2 or 3 now, against the police. But then again, it has been against misconduct within the police force. But yeah, I just wanted to make this one a little bit of a different angle. That this, although this is not okay, it's not acceptable behaviour. Let's praise them where they generally do a pretty good job. And we do need the police. But I think it would be great if the police were more, like this lovely officer, were more interactive with the angry people. I think that would go an awful long way. If the police were more interactive with angry people, and even just saying, do you know what? I go back to Pat Benatar, you have the right to be angry. I'm sorry this has happened. That would go far. A bit like, I mean, this broadcast is called Spiritual Concerns, and it largely deals with abuse within the Christian environment. The same thing could be said with the Christian faith. You know, when we have bullying Christians that are full of judgment and hate and battery, it goes a long way when they say, "Oh, sorry, we shouldn't have spoken to you that way." I think approach goes so far, doesn't it? And it's essential. And yeah, and I think we can only hope and pray for a more efficient police force, so less of these sort of things happen, but a more approachable one as well. And I think, I think that's all we can hope for, because things are getting bad, and it's trying to find a means of making it get better. But anyway, I just thought I wanted to share about last night's events with you. And yes, and once again, thank you to the lovely audience for tuning in. And until next time, lots of love and lots of blessings.